Along the shores of Lake Erie in Madison, Ohio, there's a red brick building that does not need to be massive to feel heavy. Madison Seminary has been a school, a home, a place of care, a place of loss, a place where the lives of students, Civil War widows, nurses, aging residents, and eventually ghost stories all folded into the same walls. Footsteps in empty rooms. Voices when no one should be speaking. Movement in places the team has already cleared. And one question keeps following investigators through the building. If the room is empty, why does it still sound occupied? But legends are easy, and evidence is harder.
We are No Lights Paranormal. Tonight, we're not here to worship the reputation of a haunted building. We're here to challenge haunted expectations, separate history from folklore, and ask one simple question. What does Madison Seminary actually give investigators to work with? Hello, and welcome to No Lights Paranormal, where we take haunted locations, strange claims, and spooky stories, then look at them through the eyes of actual investigators. I'm Teresa, historian, researcher, and the one responsible for separating documented history from decades of ghost stories.
And I'm Alex, the Baba Yaga enthusiast, the equipment setter-upper, and no, you know what? Now I'm back to being a tech wizard for this time because I spent my entire weekend building a damn paranormal app.
So, this season, we've changed the format a little. Instead of jumping between several different stories every episode, we've slowed things down and we're dedicating each episode to a single location.
So tonight, we're going to look at the history, the claims, and what we think deserves attention, what probably belongs in the questionable at best pile, and how we would investigate the location now, and if we've ever actually been there, which this one we have, what happened when No Lights Paranormal walked through the door.
This season, we really want to focus not only on the famous haunted locations, but also the places that people can actually book, visit, and investigate for themselves.
Which is part of why Madison Seminary matters. It is not Waverly Hills. It is not Pennhurst. It is not one of those mountaintop paranormal bucket list locations where the name alone does have to work. But to be fair, that makes it a little bit more accessible, and that is exactly what makes it interesting.
So, as you've probably guessed, because we've said it a bunch of times, tonight's location is Madison Seminary in Madison, Ohio. But before we talk about ghosts, we need to talk about what Madison Seminary actually was, because this is one of those places where the history is very, very layered. It was not built as a haunted attraction. It was not built to be a legend. It began as a school. One thing that's worth clearing up right away is the name. Despite being called a seminary, Madison Seminary was never a religious school in the modern sense. During the mid-1800s, the word seminary was commonly used for private academies and institutions of higher learning. Students came here to study subjects like mathematics, literature, science, languages, and teacher preparation, not to enter the ministry. In the mid-1800s, Madison Seminary was part of the educational life of Madison, Ohio. In its early years, it was known as Madison High School and Madison Academy. The original academy opened in the late 1800s as a wooden building. As enrollment increased, the structure was replaced by a larger red brick building that still stands today. That was completed in the mid-1950s.
And that already makes Madison different from something like Waverly. Waverly began as a medical institution. Madison begins with education, students, teachers, dorm rooms, people living there because they were too far away to travel back and forth every day. It starts as a place for learning, not sickness.
Exactly. The school educated both males and females, which was worth noting for that time period. While coeducational schools certainly did exist during the 19th century, they were far less common than they are today. Madison Seminary was considered progressive in offering educational opportunities to both young men and women, helping prepare students for teaching, business, and higher education. Students lived there, teachers worked there, classes were held there. But eventually, the school era came to an end. By the late 1800s, changes in Ohio law and a rapid expansion of Ohio's public school system, combined with declining enrollment, made private academies like Madison Seminary increasingly difficult to sustain. Madison Seminary closed as a school in 1881.
And then the building sat empty for a while, which is something we see again and again with quote unquote haunted locations. A building has one life, that life ends, then it waits, and what comes next changes the whole personality of the place.
And what came next for Madison was deeply tied to the aftermath of the Civil War. In the 1890s, the Women's Relief Corps was looking for a place to create a home for Civil War nurses, widows, mothers, daughters, and wives connected to the men who fought in the war. The Women's Relief Corps was the women's auxiliary to the Grand Army of the Republic, and its mission included supporting veterans and their families left behind after the war. Founded in 1883, the Women's Relief Corps became one of the largest patriotic women's organizations in the United States. Beyond supporting Union veterans, the organization raised money for memorials, promoted education, and provided care for widows, nurses, and other women whose lives had been permanently affected by the Civil War. Madison Seminary was chosen for that purpose. In 1891, the building was sold to the Women's Relief Corps and became a home for women whose lives had been shaped by the Civil War. Residents included not only widows, but wives, daughters, sisters of Union veterans, and women who had served as nurses during the war. Some had even lost loved ones in battle, while others cared for veterans long after the fighting ended.
And I think that part matters because when people hear Civil War widows' home, it's easy to turn that into an instant ghost story bait. But these were real people, women who had lost husbands, women who had served as nurses, and women who had very little support after the war. This is not just spooky old building becomes sad place. This was a building being used to care for people the country had a responsibility to remember.
Right. And like Waverly, this is where we have to be careful not to reduce the history to paranormal math. The question should not be, how many people died here and how haunted should that make it? The question is, who lived here? What were their lives like? And why does this place carry the emotional weight that it does? Madison was a home. It was a refuge. It was a place for aging women, widows, and nurses whose lives had already been marked by war, loss, and service. Some residents lived there peacefully. Some died there. Some were remembered. Some were probably forgotten by everyone except the building.
And that's actually feels heavier to me than just saying, old place, people died, must be haunted. Because the real history is not cheap. These were people trying to live after the worst thing in their lives had already happened.
Eventually, the Women's Relief Corps could no longer afford to maintain the home on its own. The building actually got turned over to the state of Ohio, and its use kind of continued to evolve. Over time, Madison Seminary became associated with charitable housing, care, and institutional use. Later, in 1962, the Ohio Department of Mental Hygiene and Corrections took over the property. Now, one common misconception is that Madison Seminary became a large psychiatric hospital. Now, while the Ohio Department of Mental Hygiene and Corrections did acquire the property, plans for institutional use were actually never fully recognized in the way that many paranormal studies suggest. Over the years, portions of the building were considered for various state purposes, but Madison never operated as a major asylum compared to places like Athens or Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum. That transfer is one of the more uncomfortable parts in Madison's history because it marked the end of the building's long era for the Civil War-connected women who had lived there.
And that is one of those moments where the building changes yet again. School, home, state ownership and changing plans, then eventually abandonment, county ownership, private ownership, and the haunted reputation.
Right. The state project did not become what had originally been planned. In the 1970s, the county owned the property. Madison Seminary was added to the National Registry of Historic Places in 1979. Later, the property passed into private ownership. Property owners eventually began stabilizing and preserving this historic building, allowing Madison Seminary to evolve into both a historic landmark and one of Ohio's best known paranormal investigation locations. Without those preservation efforts, much of the building and its history might have been lost. And somewhere along the way, as the building aged, emptied, changed hands, and gathered stories, Madison Seminary became known as one of Ohio's haunted locations.
And of course, this is where history starts to become folklore, because once a building has been a school, Civil War widow's home, a care facility, an institution, and then a haunted attraction, every era leaves something behind. Some of that is documented history, some of that is personal experience, some of that is tour story tradition. Some of that is also probably nonsense that got repeated until it sounded official.
And that's exactly why a place like Madison is interesting to us. It's not just a haunted building, it's a layered building. The history gives it context, the claims give investigators a map. And our job is to figure out which parts of the map are actually worth following.
So now we get into the part most people know Madison Seminary for, the ghost stories. Madison has a different flavor than some of the massive haunted locations. It's smaller than Waverly, it's more intimate, and in some ways that makes claims more interesting because when something happens in a smaller building, you have fewer places to hide. So before we start talking about ghosts, there's one thing that stands out to me.
What's that?
Madison has lived a lot of lives:
It really has.
home, school, veterans families, state ownership, private ownership.
And every one of those chapters has contributed to the building people investigate today. The claims at Madison tend to center around voices, footsteps, movement, shadows, and specific areas of the building that investigators return to time and time again. Some stories connect the haunting to the building's time as a home for the Civil War widows and nurses. Some stories connect it to later institutional history. Some are attached to named spirits, and some are simply reports of activity in specific rooms or wings.
And that is where Madison gets interesting from an investigation standpoint, because the building is not just one giant open space. It has wings, floors, rooms that behave differently, areas where sound carries in weird ways, and areas where you can actually isolate equipment and just let the room sit.
hmm One of the best known claims connected to Madison is the presence of a spirit named Sarah. Now, depending on the version of the story, Sarah is often associated with a room on the third floor. Investigators lovingly refer to it as Sarah's room, near what paranormal groups have nicknamed the Asylum section, which is on the floor directly above Sarah's room. Investigators have reported hearing voices, movement, and having physical sensations connected to the area. Now, like many named spirit claims, the details can vary depending on who's telling the story. One thing we want to point out is that despite Sarah being one of the most well known names associated with Madison Seminary, we haven't found any documented history records connecting a specific resident or staff member named Sarah to that room. That doesn't mean investigators haven't had meaningful experiences there. It simply means the identity itself remains unverified from a historical standpoint. And that's an important distinction for us to make.
And that means Sarah is interesting, but again, a spirit named gives people something to focus on, which can be useful, but also can be a trap, because once people believe the room belongs to Sarah, every sound in that room starts getting assigned to Sarah before the sound has even earned a conclusion. EVPs always turn into Sarah, are you there? Or Sarah this and Sarah that.
Exactly. A named claim can help direct an investigation, but it can also hinder an investigation and should not decide the final answers. Oftentimes, groups get real hung up on a name and forget to just investigate. If people report activity in Sarah's room, then that room deserves attention. But the question is not, did Sarah make a noise? The question is, what was recorded? Who was nearby? And what else was happening in the building that we can account for?
And because we have actually investigated Madison, Sarah's room is a perfect example of why static equipment matters, which is something that we've started focusing heavily on. We had that room sitting empty for a very long stretch this last time we were there. No one standing there performing for the recorder, no one constantly asking questions, no one walking around and trying to make something happen. And the recorder still captured things worth reviewing. Not public proof, drop everything and post this immediately evidence, but enough to say, okay, maybe we should take another look at this.
Hmm. Another major category of claims at Madison is footsteps. People report hearing footsteps in empty rooms, hallways, stairways. In a building like Madison, that kind of claim can be handled carefully because sound can travel from one area to another extremely well, especially when you've got teams working on different floors, kind of like our accidental piano situation.
Yeah. And to be fair, Madison is a brutal lesson in contamination. Team can be upstairs and still sound like they are somewhere else. Footsteps can bleed through the building. To be fair, one nice part is in like Sarah's room's specific wing of the building, you'll hear it anytime one of your team touches the stairs on that side of the building.
Sure.
It will echo through. So, yeah, footsteps can bleed through the building, voices can muffle through floors and walls. A single thump can sound more important until you realize someone upstairs moved a chair or shifted their weight.
Or
So,
dropped a walkie talkie.
or dropped a walkie talkie. So, footsteps are worth paying attention to, but only if you know where everyone was, which is why during our investigation we separated and set only one team on each wing in excuse me, in order to erase possible upstairs downstairs contamination.
Mm-hmm. And that brings up one of the areas we've talked about a lot since our investigation, the asylum area. The part of the building has honestly produced so many reports of activity, and during our investigation, it became one of the most important zones of the night.
Absolutely. So the asylum gave us our biggest operational lessons, if you can call it that. And not just a paranormal lesson. A team had activity start while they were up there. One member started feeling physically affected, needed to leave, which is completely fine. And honestly, priority number one, safety wins. But what we learned afterward is that an active location should never be completely abandoned if it is still safe to be covered. Someone has to leave, someone can escort them out, but the activity zone either gets held, handed off, or documented as abandoned for safety reasons. What we do not want is something happened, everyone leaves, and now the most interesting room of the night is empty with no human coverage.
And that's the kind of thing that changes how a team investigates. It did change our way of investigation. Sometimes you don't learn the rule unless the building teaches it to you.
Exactly. And so what happened was Madison taught us some rotations and guidelines. Activity overrides the clock. There's plenty of times where we go out, and I don't think that a lot of investigators sometimes realize we put a number on it, but we put a static number on it. You know, we say, okay, team A, go to the left wing. Team B, go to the right wing. Hang out there for 30 minutes, then come back. All right. We keep it at like 30 minutes because we feel like if nothing's going on, people will get bored and start wondering. But, if something happens, it start at minute 25, then no, hold the area, call command. That's honestly what we use our two-way radios for and walkie-talkies and why they're so important. And you pause the rotation.
Hmm. That's honestly why we use the two-way radios. The walkies that we have are a super important piece of gear. Sometimes that communication is super critical. There are also claims of voices and disembodied sounds throughout the building. Investigators will report hearing whispers, distant voices, possibly even audible responses, and sounds that appear to come from rooms where there is just nobody there.
Audio at Madison is both fascinating and completely infuriating because the building gives you both good opportunities and good traps. The good opportunity is that you can leave a room and a recorder in a room alone and just let it run. The trap is that Madison has areas where upstairs movement, hallway movement, and room local sounds can overlap. So you have to listen for the character of the sound. Is it muffled and distant? Is it sharp and local? Does it sound like somebody's literally breathing into the microphone, which we had happen?
Mm,
Does it sound like it came from above? Does it sound like it happened right beside the recorder? Those distinctions matter.
mhm. And shadow figures and visual movement are also part of the location's paranormal reputation. People are always reporting seeing figures, movement, shadows in doorways, shadows darting across the hall. Like most shadow claims, they're pretty difficult to prove without the support of your video camera.
And again, that is kind of why we started migrating towards a lot more static. And it matters because if someone says, I saw something move in that doorway, that is interesting. The camera was watching that doorway and catches movement, and everyone was accounted for. That's much better. If five people are just wandering around the dark and someone catches a 1 second shadow out of the corner of their eye, that's not really enough. It's not useless. It's just not enough.
And some claims at Madison are tied to very specific rooms or personalities, while others are kind of generic. Knocks, footsteps, movement, feelings of being watched, the sounds of objects shifting. But as with any location, those claims are not all equal.
And Madison really proved that to us because some noises are just building noises, and some noises are probably other teams. Some are identifiable once you compare them to DVR footage, but some sounds, they earn a second listen, especially when a room has been empty for a long time, especially when that sound is sharp, local, and different from known contamination patterns, especially when multiple events cluster together instead of appearing as one random pop, which is what we had happen in Sarah's room. I reviewed two different sound clusters isolated in an empty room for more than an hour after and before anybody had entered that room. And no, none of them were a little girl's voice saying, "Hello, this is Sarah," or anything close to a Class A EVP, but they were enough that I would label it kind of an anomaly.
hmm So, when we talk about Madison's claims, we're not saying that every single sound is paranormal. We're saying that the building gives investigators several specific things to test, like Sarah's room and the asylum, voices, footsteps, local room movement, shadow claims, sharp sounds versus muffled contamination. And the question becomes, what can we actually control?
And Madison is where this gets interesting for us because the building really rewarded patience more than performance. Some locations almost dare you to run around chasing the next sound. Madison felt more like it just needed to be watched, not provoked every 5 seconds, not constantly talked over, just watched. Because if a room keeps getting claims attached to it, or if some same kind of sound keeps showing up in the same area, the best thing we can do is stop becoming part of the room's noise.
Which is a lot harder than people might think.
It really is, because like we said before, when you're investigated, especially in the moment, you always feel like you should be doing something, asking a question, doing an active EVP session, moving to another room, picking up another device, reacting to every little sound. But Madison reminded us that sometimes the better move is to just get out of the way and let the equipment do its job.
And because Madison is not a humongous, enormous building, that kind of approach actually works.
Exactly. Madison is small enough that you can control it, but layered enough that you can still be smart about it. You can isolate rooms, you can compare upstairs movement against downstairs audio. You can leave a recorder in Sarah's room and later ask, was anybody actually near this when it happened? That's the value, not chasing the building, learning how the building behaves.
And that naturally changes how we would go back in. So, after our last investigation, if we were going back to Madison tomorrow, what would you change first?
Honestly, I think Madison kinda already gave us the answer. We don't need to reinvent the whole approach. We need to tighten it up. The static setup worked. The DVR coverage worked. The recorder in Sarah's room gave us stuff worth following up on. But now we know how the building carries sound and how the upstairs can bleed into other areas and how quickly an active room can get abandoned if people are not clear on the plan. I would go back in with better rules and Not to say that nobody followed the rules, but, like, I feel like we all learned something from that experience. And before I even taught gear, I would want the team to understand one thing. If a room becomes active, the clock stops being the boss.
Mhm. I think that I would probably call it better contingency plans. I think that that covers it. I mean, Sarah's room definitely matters, but it should be treated as a test area. It's not a guaranteed ghost room where you're definitely going to get activity or movement or something like that.
To be fair, I feel like this last time, literally, so I can tell you from reviewing the audio that that room sat empty and by itself for a solid 3 to 3.5 hours. And to be fair, audio-wise, I feel like to an extent we got more out of that room audio-wise than we have ever gotten actively investigating it.
I agree completely. I think that that's actually why Madison is so good for repeat visits because all the different areas of the building are very, very manageable. You've got two completely separate wings that are, located away from the main, what we'll call landing zone, if you will. So you can have people over completely on one wing of the building and completely on the other wing of the building, and you don't have to worry too much about the sound traveling. Where other buildings, small, even smaller buildings than this, you've got multiple people just literally right on top of each other.
And to be fair, and I think we talked about this a little bit, just a heads up, I'm currently working on a YouTube series where I can help with tech layouts for buildings that we've actually been to and how we set things up. So to go along with what you were saying, I don't want to call it an east and a west because well, I mean, I guess it is fitting, but I can't keep track of which one's which. So coming in from the common room area, I call it the left wing and the right wing. We standardly have a pretty solid 6 people that are like the core team that are always there. So with a place like Madison, so that we didn't get the up and down audio contamination, the hard fast rule was we have 3 teams of 2. One of those teams is going to be manning the DVR screens. One team will be on the left wing and one team will be on the right wing because they are far enough apart that left wing and right wing, the audio will not interfere with each other. And I feel like that's kind of an important thing for people to know. Like when they're trying to go into an investigation and set up for an investigation, if they've never been there before.
Mhm, mhm. Agreed. And that honestly, all of that is I absolutely love that we are close enough and the building is, rich enough in history that it makes it for repeat trips for us. We can go basically as often as we like. So we get to really kind of focus on the patterns of the building as opposed to like those crazy one night theatrics.
And to be fair, another thing that makes it repeatable, and one reason that I like it and I like bringing it up on the podcast, and don't get me wrong, we have some more investigations coming that sit in the same zone. But another thing that makes it repeatable is kind of the price.
Yeah.
If you can get there on a weekday, it's $300 a night.
Yeah.
If you can get there on a weekend, it's $500 a night. But when you look at it next to places like Waverly that are 1,000, $1,200 a night, or Trans Allegheny that's $1,800 a night,
That's not super affordable for most groups.
then are most groups going to want to go to a $500 place 3 times for their $1,500 limit, or just go one time?
Exactly. I personally like the smaller places. If we can afford the bigger places, of course I want to go. I love those places. I love all haunted history buildings. But I just really love return trips where we can actually dig in there and repeat the process, refine the process, and decide exactly what it is that we need to do to maximize the use of our investigation time.
Right. And that's one of the things that I tried to express on the last episode was if you can afford the big places, by all means, go visit the big places. But if one big place is your whole budget, then it might be worthwhile for you to go to 3 small places instead of one big place. So, that said, for me, Madison is where the method started truly working. This new method that we were started using, the static. It taught us that the gear is not the investigation. The plan is the investigation. The gear proves whether or not the plan worked. And to be fair, going along with the gear not being the investigation, I feel like it's a lot easier to pick up on and notice things. It's the same idea as I hate to sound like an old fuddy-duddy at this point, but like taking your cell phone to a concert. Like, if you're trying to record a concert, you're not in the moment. You're not actively investigating. You're trying to look through the lens of a camera or worry about the EVP session. So, to me, it taught me that the gear is not the investigation. The investigation is the investigation, and the gear is going to do its job whether you're holding on to it or not.
That's exactly correct. So, what of all of the claims from Madison will you actually prioritize on our next trip?
Let's see. So, Sarah's room. Listen, like I said, certain groups like us, we have the equipment to cover the quote unquote 3 or 4 hot zones or 3 to 5 hot zones in a building, plus still cover the rest of the building pretty reasonably. We have 8 DVR cameras, and if we want to, we can stretch it to 10, but 8 is generally enough. So Sarah's room, because it's produced enough empty room audio to justify another test. The Asylum, because it produced the active session that had issues and people went away from. And also, to be fair, I kind of like the bigger, more open rooms where there's different section to the rooms itself. Footsteps only matter if the team's location can be locked down. And to be fair, like I said, the nice part of Madison, at least for the right wing, I'm calling it the right wing, that's the side with Sarah's room and the Asylum, is once a team starts moving over there, you will, because of the echo, immediately hear them as soon as they hit the stairs.
Yeah.
Like there's no question, like, oh, okay, somebody's over here.
Yeah, it's not quite as loud on the other side.
And to be fair, if you hear footsteps coming up the stairs, you don't see anybody. That's a new game by itself.
Yeah, then you're like, that's interesting. Yeah, agreed, wholeheartedly.
What would you put into the probably should not chase or over focus on pile?
Well, okay. So obviously you've got lots of sounds going on in the building all of the time, whether it's a window creaking or the wind blowing, or like that one time when that vent on the outside, the wind was blowing it, and it was making like a metallic sound.
We have double and triple checked that area on like 2 separate investigations,
Oh yeah.
maybe
Oh
3.
yeah. But I think that you need to really, really pay attention to any sounds that you're gonna hear during controlled team movement. But when you get like uncontrolled movement, like when we're moving from one area to another, and there's a lot of footsteps, and we're huffing and puffing because we're going up 3 flights of stairs, you kind of can't count anything that you get during that, because it could literally be any of us making a funky noise.
Nope. Absolutely agree. And so like one thing that I'll say is okay, we'll tell the mini story here
Mm.
about you dinging a piano.
I did. There is a beautiful, there's a couple of pianos in the building actually, but there is a beautiful old piano down in the dining room, the original dining room. And the piano really does not work super well. The keys don't have a lot of pressure on them. And I hit a couple of keys, and they were just very, very, very low, ping, ping, ping. Nothing special. But apparently I scared the living shit out of everybody on the floors above me.
Everybody on the floors above you being me, just me
you.
by myself.
Just you.
I was sitting in Otis's office by myself watching the DVRs while you and Trent went on that side of the building and Matt and Tracy and them were on the other side of the building.
Mhm.
I only heard one note, and the only reason that it really caught my attention is because I don't know if it's still there, to be fair, because I didn't even look in that room this last time we were there. But the room that had the big map on the wall, like
No,
like
there
like
wasn't. Yeah, no.
across from Otis's office. I know at least there used to be. I don't know if there still is one in there, and that's why I was like, I it actually it startled me. It didn't really startle me, but I started thinking about it, and I'm like, did that literally just come from across the
Because
hall?
yeah,
Because it was loud enough that it was
nobody's over there right now. So where what how did that happen exactly? But no, there's I want to say there's 3 or 4 pianos in the building.
probably.
I do not remember if there's still one in the map room.
I didn't walk into that room this time, so
I did, and I still don't remember. Isn't that weird?
because I
Um,
know that it was
I'd have to check
on
the camera footage.
I know that it was on the wall on the far side
Mhm.
going towards that hallway.
Yeah, where yeah, exactly, like where Otis's room was.
No, Otis's room is so if you come up the stairs and at the top of the stairs
That
immediately turn left, the side of the hallway will split in two and then it'll go up and around. And the side where Otis's office is, those bedrooms on that side, that's where like Otis's room was, and there's like a little kind of lounge room over
yeah,
here.
like his actual family lived over there.
Right. And then if you go right from the stairs, that's where the map room is, and then there's some just I think regular bedrooms or something on the other side. There's a
Now
bathroom on both sides,
mind
but
you, if you have been there and you're kinda trying to figure out where the heck we're at, the map room is literally the large almost what looks like it used to be a classroom. Now they have a dining table set up in there, but on the opposite side of the flooring, there's a desk and some bookshelves, and there is quite literally a massive map that covers one entire wall. So, we just call it the map room.
right. But yeah, so I mean there was that. What were we talking about? Like I got
Well,
sidetracked with the
I mean,
map room and
there are a lot of things. There are a lot of things. So the way that the sound kind of bled, that was interesting. But there was another event that was very similar when one of our investigators accidentally dropped his walkie-talkie and like 5 people about shat themselves. So that I thought was super hilarious.
at that point I was actually in the opposite wing and I didn't hear it at all.
Yeah, I didn't
So
hear it.
but no, oh, I know where I was going with that. So, like, some of the stuff that I got in Sarah's room, right? I got stuff like taps and like it sounded like somebody walking across the floor.
Mhm.
And again, so this was I want to say a good 20 minutes to a half an hour after Tracy, Brandon, and Ezra had left that side. And after they left that side, because of the rotations, when you and Trent started on the bottom floors, so you didn't even get up to Sarah's room and the asylum
Before our 30 minutes was up. Yeah.
before your 30 minutes was up. And honestly, so I can tell you from the audio recorder that that side of the building from the third floor up literally sat empty for like 3.5 hours,
It did. I know I went through a lot of footage on that side as well.
which to be fair is fine. That's clear and to an extent perfect for what we were doing.
Agreed.
But yeah, there were 2 instances where for like probably 2 to 3 minutes straight, there were like footsteps walking around that room. There was one where like there was literally like a breath directly into the microphone.
Mhm.
And then, like, there were a couple of times where I heard, like, a horn, and what I mean by a horn is I don't mean, like, a car horn or anything like that. It almost sounded like a trombone, like, note slide,
Interesting.
and I'm like, "Well, that's weird because there's no fucking trombones there that I know
There
of."
were a lot of crazy sounds on the audio and video recorders, the static cameras.
But
So many.
what I wanted to explain was, like, for teams that are doing this quasi seriously like we do, just because it's not a class A EVP that you can put on a website and be like, "Hey, check out this fucking sentence that this ghost spewed out." Like a cluster of 3 straight minutes of shit going on in a room where you know there's nobody, like
Yeah.
halfway into an empty 3
I
hours,
mean, there was literally
um,
nobody on the floor above or the floor below.
for 3.5 hours. So shit like that is like what I call a data point.
Agreed.
Like, this is okay. I can't put this on a website, but I'm gonna remember this happened for next time.
Yeah, because again, just because that room is famous does not mean that every single sound you hear is paranormal.
Absolutely. And to be fair, I'm gonna say this, just because it's not a fucking voice doesn't mean it's not paranormal.
That's so true. So true. Because, yeah, we've definitely heard footsteps. And I know there was nobody there.
Harder to prove? Needs context? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Just flat out, just not paranormal because it's footsteps and it could have been anything.
And that's another thing. You want to make positive that your evidence doesn't just become some interesting talking point because you really, really want the building to be haunted. Sometimes you actually do have to separate. Oh, okay. Well, I remember so-and-so was walking, past that floor. Yeah.
So that leads me into I am going to renege on all of the shit that I give orbs, okay? Because that audio discussion right there is my explanation for my feelings on orbs.
Yeah.
All right. An orb is not something I'm going to post on a website ever, period. I'm not going to be like, oop, we got a ghost orb.
Right.
No, they can be a million fucking things, and without context, they don't really matter. Much like the knocks, the footsteps, the this, the that. You could be like, oh, well, somebody knocked on a wall. Like, you
Right.
can't prove
Right.
that didn't sound like any of you guys. Orbs are the same way. That doesn't mean I don't believe in orbs. Like, I have literally twice in my life, like, seen orbs where I'm like, oh, well, that's fucking different.
Mhm. I mean, you don't get really smacked in the face with it until you see an orb with your own eyeballs.
Yeah, most prominently the one over in that jail that we went to on the Indiana border.
Oh, yeah. Old Paulding.
Old Paulding, yeah. Walking downstairs, I literally watched an orb come at me from across the dark room and then shoot up through the floor.
I love that.
And it was just one. Like, I saw that with my eyes, and it was, like, fucking glowing. All right? If I would've got a picture of it, I'm still not posting it. Yeah, I saw it. Yeah, I have a story, and I have the
You
context,
can't
but
prove that it's not a moth or
but
something.
also, it's in a fucking dirty-ass basement, so anybody with a brain and a camera is gonna be like, "Yeah, that was probably dust." I can tell you that it wasn't because I have the full context.
Exactly.
Nobody else can.
Well, so we've talked about the history, the claims, and how we would approach Madison if we went in again tomorrow. This one is definitely different from Waverly because we didn't just visit Madison one time years ago. We actually have been using it to build our method and explore new ways of investigating. And yeah, I love it. It's kind of
Yeah.
setting our roadmap.
I think this was what, like, trip 5 this last time?
Yeah.
5 or 6, something like that.
Yeah. It's been several. I love it there. So, what were we actually expecting when we walked into Madison this time?
To be fair, I kinda didn't know what to expect from Madison this time, mainly because, again, we've been there, like, 4 or 5 times now previous to this time, and, like, it's been kinda all over the place.
Yes.
Generally, what I expect from Madison is there's at least going to be one point of the night where something's gonna start happening.
Yeah.
It's probably gonna be, ratios 20 to 30 minutes out of our whole, like, 8-hour investigation. Like, there's
Exactly.
shit that's gonna happen, and that's standard on most any
Yeah, that's
investigation.
pretty average.
For you, did the building feel different once we started using more static equipment?
It did actually for me. Not necessarily the area that I was in, but when I was on evidence review and I was going through video and audio in rooms that were absolutely empty, I definitely think that I heard more small activity, whether it be a footstep or a shuffle or something seeming like it moved. So much more of that because I feel like we were allowing the spirits time to breathe without being all up in their faces, being like, hey, talk to me.
I definitely feel like there's kind of a double-edged sword to that, in the fact that because nobody was there to do an active EVP session, like, I feel like that may be a reason where you don't really get many, if any, Class A EVPs. Like, they don't have a reason to talk.
True.
But what I also learned is, and you can even go back through some of our Class A EVPs, is People have a really bad habit of not giving the spirits enough time to talk when they do EVPs, and
Yeah.
a lot of times they're talking over them.
Yeah, absolutely. You gotta be so very careful. You've got to give them a reasonable amount of time to respond to your question. You can't ask them for a sentence and then cut them off after one word. That doesn't work.
Exactly, and there's plenty of, "Who is this? How long have you been here?" Like, literally back to back,
Back to
and you're
back.
like, "Mm, wha."
They don't even have time to answer you, so you're not gonna get anything worth getting. How do you think that Madison compares to the bigger places like Waverly?
I think it's a real kind of give and take when you compare a place like Madison and Waverly. I absolutely love both places, don't get me wrong. What I would say that I actually prefer about some of the smaller places like Madison is there's no feeling of, like, overwhelming when you get to the building. I don't really know how to explain it. So, like, when you pull up to Waverly or Penhurst,
Mm,
we've been to both, or, the Mansfield Reformatory. You pull up and you're looking at the building and, like, your brain is instantly like, "Holy shit."
yeah, it's
And, like,
enormous.
especially when it starts getting dark, like, there's that incessant creep factor because it's so big and it's so empty, and, like, immediately it's almost the same, like, if you wanna compare it to a small building, it's almost the same as, like, expecting something if you go to an
A
attic or a basement.
Agreed. I
Yeah.
wanna say that after we've done this for as long as we have, a lot of the creep factor does kinda go away, but you definitely like, I mean, it's human nature. You're gonna be, like, looking around with big eyes in a dark room. Like, that's gonna happen.
I mean, take Waverly the last time we were there, and, I mean, this is, kind of a strangely big step for me. I spent probably 10 minutes tops, like, actually with somebody and not walking around that building by myself.
I did a whole lot of alone exploration at Waverly this time as well. I just felt so much more comfortable.
I mean, yeah, I walked every floor by myself. I literally walked the death tunnel twice by myself. Uh, no fears, no creepy factor. It just was what it was. But no, to get back to the root of your question, I'm fine. My favorite investigations, I would say, are buildings roughly the size of Madison, and I would put Madison at a pretty fair medium. All right.
Agreed, agreed.
It's not huge like Waverly, but it's big enough that you can have two teams out at the same time and not mix audio.
Agreed.
As to where if you go to a smaller house type place, like you really got to be careful.
Some of the things that I really kind of want to hit on is just like little important notes to keep in mind specifically about Madison. So, for starters, Madison has never for us been about one explosive piece of evidence.
No, in fact, if anything, I would argue that we have never gotten that from
Yeah, we've
Madison.
never gotten an explosive piece of evidence, I agree. We've had personal experiences, we've had phenomenal EVPs, we've had phenomenal shadows and light anomalies on video, we've had phenomenal thermal hits.
With maybe the exception of that thermal hit.
Okay, the thermal
That
hits
that may have
was
been one, like, holy
yeah,
shit
that was like,
moment.
okay, that's pretty fucking awesome. Because I'm 100% positive nobody had been over there prior to us getting to the area because the building was empty.
Nobody else was there.
Right, it was the start of our
It was
investigation.
one person by himself.
So yeah, and then to see a handprint that you can make out as a handprint, like that's pretty awesome. I just also still want to say though, like empty room time super matters, especially with the situation with Sarah's room, where you put the static audio, we put the static video, and we picked stuff up when absolutely no one was near. We allowed the room and the space to just do what it was going to do. And we were lucky enough to hear some of that.
Well, and let's be honest, that's one of the reasons that we've kept ourselves to such a small team. Don't get me wrong, like, most of these places have a limit of, like, 8 to 10 people anyway, but we were, like, 6 people is fucking plenty.
Yeah.
And that's because, like, even in active investigation mode and not just letting rooms sit empty, I believe we've all found that we get more activity when it's, like, 2 people versus
Yep,
there's 4 people clod hopping over here and making noise, and
exactly.
maybe it's because you can't hear over the extra footsteps,
That could
I
be.
don't know, but I find the smaller the groups, the more activity you get,
I
and
also think that there might be something to be said for the intimidation factor that we give to the spirits. If we're coming up there as a freaking army marching across the floor, they're like, whoa, what the shit is that? When it's just a couple of us, two of us sitting quietly in a room, that's not very intimidating. So they might feel a little bit more comfortable just going about their routine or even being allowed to be curious about us without feeling overwhelmed and outnumbered.
I also do want to hit on the other probably bigger lesson that we learned, and this may apply to other teams as well. If you wanted to start kind of doing the static investigation thing, kind of depends on the equipment you have. So we have 2 sets of wireless DVRs, which is basically portable DVR screen and 4 cameras attached to one, and the other one has its own portable screen and 4 cameras attached to that. And one thing that I think, and it was my idea, but one thing that I think that wasn't made clear enough was that DVR operators are Overwatch and not necessarily chained to the screen.
Exactly.
The idea of having people watch the DVR screens was to give Team 3 something to do while Team 1 and 2 were in their suggested wings.
So here's actually what happened. So we had a team of three up in the asylum, and I was actually down 2 floors from them watching the DVR system. It was my turn to sort of watch the screen. So prior to us beginning, it was okay, we're going to take these little half an hour shifts. My shift was assigned to sit for a half an hour at the DVR system. Their shift was they went up to the asylum and did some investigating. Well, something had happened, and Ezra, one of our investigators, started feeling just incredibly sick, like to the point where he thought he was going to be like vomiting, his head was swimming. It was just not okay. So, for his own safety, he needed to leave that situation and get out of there and, calm down and reset. So, Matt had taken a hold of him and said, "Okay, great, let's get you down the stairs." So all three of the investigators ended up leaving the area and coming down the stairs. They passed by me at the third floor and they said, "Hey, something has happened. We're, taking him downstairs." Well, at that point, what should have happened was I should have abandoned the camera because the camera is going to be the camera no matter what. It doesn't actually need watching to record things. And I should have taken Matt and I should have gone back up to the asylum while the activity was happening. And I should have let the other two head downstairs. Now, I did not do that because despite the fact that I know that that's what should have happened, in my mind, I was like, oh, well, I can't go. I got 10 more minutes on the DVR.
Right. And like I said, it's one of those things that you don't realize that you have to say when you're setting up the plan until it happens, and then that happens.
Yeah, then you're like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't tell you something more important is happening. Get away from the DVR and go check it out." So, we ended up completely, just vacating an active area at the moment that it was active, and that was just the biggest brain fart I think any of us have ever had. Obviously, it's great that everybody was worried about Ezra and getting him out of the situation and, making him safe, but there were enough of us that we could have done both.
Absolutely. And to be fair, like I said, I'm not actually even gonna lay it all on you. We had radios. The sad part was, at no point in time over there did anybody use a radio
Mm-mm.
because we were
Nope.
to be fair, all 3 teams are on the same channel, so everybody would have heard it.
Right. Somebody could have said, "Hey, we're having activity up here. We need to get Ezra out. We need backup."
I know that Matt is one of those people that is generally like you and myself, and he would not be afraid to go and stay there by himself while
Until
somebody came
until
to him.
his yeah. But at the
And
same time, he's also
he's the safety guy. So
yeah, not only is he the safety guy, but the reason he's the safety guy is because he's an extreme sort of father figure.
right,
Oh, the young one doesn't feel well. I'm gonna fix this.
right. No. So don't take it the wrong way. I'm definitely not blaming him.
No, we just
Me
know the next
myself
time.
personally, I would have looked at the people that I had with me, had Brandon take Ezra downstairs because I also knew that it was Brandon's first time ever doing anything like
Yeah,
that.
and he you
So
don't
there's no way he was staying upstairs by
you
himself.
do not want to leave a newbie alone in an active room.
No, and
You're gonna
especially
just
somebody that's never done it
you're
before.
just gonna scare the shit out of him, and it's not cool.
Now that said, like, if you're the first timer that's never gone before and you're comfortable with something like that, say something to the person that's setting up the investigation.
Yeah, just
So,
be like, "Hey, I'm gonna stay. You 2 go."
because don't get me wrong, I will let a new person stay by themselves if they want to.
If you feel comfy, cool.
I'm just saying I'm not going to put you in that position on purpose.
Exactly, exactly. So, where does that leave this particular Madison Seminary investigation for us? If you have investigated Madison yourself, we would actually genuinely love to hear what happened to you. What did you experience? What things stood out to you? What questions are you still trying to answer? You can actually find us on Facebook. You can visit us on nolightsparanormal.com. You can reach us through literally almost any social media page at No Lights Paranormal or No Lights Para on X, because every investigation starts with somebody asking a question. Sometimes those questions lead to answers. Sometimes they just lead to better questions. And honestly, we're perfectly okay with that.
But anyway, it has come to that time of the night.
I want to say one more thing.
Absolutely.
All of the evidence that we have discussed, we aren't playing EVPs for people. We aren't posting our videos for people on the Facebook page. This is a podcast, so you can't visually see the video that I would play for you. So instead, what I'm going to do, we have a No Lights Paranormal page on YouTube. I am going to put completely unfucked with, unedited audio and video up for you so that you guys can see what we see and hear what we hear. And of course, if you want to comment on it, cool. We'd love that.
Also, just as a heads up, two things that we are working on probably implementing for the YouTubes itself is my brain has deciphered two. Listen, there's plenty of the paranormal files and the project fears and the hour-long videos,
Yeah.
of investigations. My brain said, let's go ahead and make some short form videos and kind of break them up so that you, the viewer slash listener, gets to watch whatever part you want to watch, and what you don't want to watch, just don't watch it. That's fine.
Yeah, if you have 3 hours to sit and look through videos, great. Just look through multiple videos instead of trying to find 3 hours to just sit through one. That's a lot.
So, what we've decided to do going forward, at least with the investigations that we get, is that I am going to have Teresa record her own little series.
Mm.
It's just going to be like the history of the series, and maybe even have like interviews with the caretakers of the place that we go to. Just quick little 10-15 minute videos.
Yep.
And alternatively, one thing that I'm going to start doing, being the equipment setter upper and the blinky light guy, is something that I've actually not seen on any other paranormal videos. And that's, I'm going to give you the initial walkthrough of the building and show you where I'm setting up cameras and how the building's laid out.
Mm-hmm.
Because despite how great and perfectly edited a lot of these long format videos are, like, at no point in time do they ever be like, oh, this is where our static cameras are.
Yeah, you're super lost. You have no idea what's actually placed where in those buildings.
So I know that for me, like, if I was going to go to, so say this Saturday, we're going to the Anchorage Mansion in Marietta, okay? I would love nothing more than to have a YouTube video that I can go to and be like, oh, well, that's the general layout of the place, and that's where I can set up some cameras. Those videos don't exist.
Right. And I've actually already spoken to the lady who is going to be giving us our tour that day, since this is our very first visit. She already knows that we don't want to hear paranormal claims so that we don't go in there expecting certain things in certain areas. But she is going to give us the history, and she is going to do an on-camera interview for me. So, yep, we'll have that.
Fantastic. So, it's about that time to wrap this up. So, we would like to thank you for spending some time with us tonight. Keep your recorders running, keep your notes honest, and until next time, don't fuck with the Baba Yaga.
Good night.